Hello Internet, welcome back to our Cataclysm tutorial playthrough. In this episode we're going to polish off our vehicle work. I thought if we had some downtime we might also talk about farming, because we probably should have done that a long time ago, and it's getting closer and closer to summer, so the sooner we plant the better. But for now we're going to focus on clearing up our vehicle. How are we doing with our battery? Is empty, so let's unload the welder. Once again, having more medium batteries would make this a lot more tolerable, but what are we going to do? So we want to keep an eye on our battery charge as well. We never want this to dip to the point where it's completely depleted. Now that we have a solar panel on it, even if it were fully depleted, it would just mean we had to wait a little while until we had enough charge to start the engine. But in general, I don't like letting them get down to zero. And then this is an important thing. We put a solar panel on it. Normally, especially on a big vehicle, so we've extended the rear here, we would like to fill pretty much all of these tiles with solar panels until they're full, and then usually once I fill the interior, I'll start putting them on the exterior tiles as well. Really, the more solar panels, the better. And not only that, but we would like to put additional batteries in this so that, like, for instance, right this second, we're getting battery charge in that's being wasted because we don't have a battery to put it in. Our battery's already full. Now, normally you would do this with with storage batteries, but we haven't really seen any of those. Those are large, like industrial, commercial style batteries that they're very large. They hold a very large charge, and they only really appear on solar vehicles. You don't really see them anywhere else, unfortunately. And we haven't really... Actually, we saw a small street sweeper, which I believe I pointed out at the time. It's a very small vehicle. I think those have some kind of storage battery in them, but they don't have solar panels. So we haven't really seen a solar vehicle, so we haven't been able to harvest a lot of solar panels. If you can't find a solar vehicle, you're pretty much limited to finding buildings that have roofs. If we go up a floor, some of these shops that have roofs will have solar panels. You don't really see them on homes, as far as I know, but some of these shops will have them on the roofs. So, like the evac shelter is a reliable place to get them. If you ever spot an evac shelter, you might as well beeline, take a detour, and grab the solar panel off the roof. But other than that, it's kind of a crapshoot. Some of the roofs have them, some of them don't. And we really would like some storage batteries and more solar panels. But for now, can't really do anything about that. So let's turn on this recharger. Turned on recharge. Yes. Okay, so what else are we going to need here? We're going to need sheet metal to finish the boards. We're going to need the cargo carriers so we can start pulling cargo carriers off. We're going to need, I think, also sheet metal for roofs, I think. How many sheet metals do I have? About 17, 18. Okay, so let's just harvest. We've already harvested the cargo spaces. Are they also on this tile? Yes, we have 5 cargo spaces. Let's pull this one off of this vehicle that we had installed to test the exterior thing. So we'll saw this off. Shriekling spotted. No, you're okay. We'll grab that, and that should have afforded our battery a chance to recharge. Perfect. Turn off the recharger. Again, we could just leave that on, but it does have a consistent power draw even when it's not charging a battery. Even when it's empty, it still draws power, so it's better to not leave that on. Our solar panel is enough to counteract that. I believe the draw on the recharger is a -10, and the solar panel is a +60 at the moment because the sun is up. And obviously, solar panels, as the night comes, they're less valuable, depending on what time of day it is. So, and then at night, they're useless. So let's install... What door did we decide on? Shutter door. Okay, we'll install some more shutter doors back here. And yeah, I'm hoping to polish this off today. Shriekling, no. Not really worried about the shriekling. If it comes over here, it will hurt us before I realize it, but it's not going to kill us or anything. Shutter door. Really would just like to get roofs on, and then a few cargo spaces in. And that's about the extent of what I plan to do. I don't know if we have to roof these tiles. Do we roof these tiles? Doesn't look like it. We only roof the interior. In fact, there's no roof. Oh, it's a heavy-duty roof. We could, again, pull off the heavy-duty roof and replace them with regular roofs. if we were trying to lighten our vehicle a little bit, but that's a pretty insignificant value. So let's put a roof. Why don't I have the option for a roof? Our welder's empty. Of course it is. Does the cargo space require a welder, or is it just a wrench cargo? Nope, requires a welder. So unload. Unload. Why can't I unload the welder? Oh, because I never reloaded the welder. Weird that we could put the doors on without having reloaded the welder. I guess those are just bolted on. That's interesting. Let's do roofs first, because that way I can't put a roof. Oh, it already has a roof. I want to do the roofs first because I would like to have the interior blacked out so that even if we don't go the whole route of putting all the cargo spaces in right now, we at least have a place we can sleep in the back of the vehicle. So we're going to need roofs. No, ignore. We're going to need roofs to prevent the sun from coming in, the light to coming in, because it will otherwise wake us up. Roofs are less essential. The side panels that we've been putting on to block sight is more important, because if the zombies can't see us, they won't bother us. We can leave the roof open and just kind of cover up our eyes with a blindfold to sleep. And since it's the roof, it's not like a zombie is going to see us through the roof. But if we get rained on or have other inclement weather, that could be an issue for us. So I think we're good now on roofs. Nope, missed a roof. Why? I'm out of battery charge again, I guess. So annoying. Unload the welder. Drop this in the charger. And we're unfortunately not going to finish this on this actual day. So what we'll do is stand around for the charger to charge a little bit to get our battery charged. And then we'll turn off the recharger because, again, we don't want to leave this running, especially at night where we're not getting any power draw from the solar panel. We'll head back to base. We'll eat, drink, sleep, and we'll discuss farming a little bit. Some major stuttering here. Looks like a zombie died on the broken glass. That was the Shriekling. So good for you, Shriekling. So I'm just going to tap these buttons because holding it down seems to be very laggy. I've been noticing more and more the last couple of the last week or so, that the game is really stuttery, particularly when I drive and things. So I don't love that. Go ahead and eat some more sausage, get some huge amount of calories into us. And the reason I wanted to address farming is because we have found a lot of this food that we can convert into seeds and things. Just eat some crackers, I don't know. Have a drink. Water. Nope, not the dirty water. Drink the clean water. And we really should just go to bed because I think we've been up for a very long time and we don't want to get like dead tired. And again, your focus is lowered. Your max focus is lowered when you're tired. So it's generally not great to work on skills while you're doing this. Let's check if we have any seeds. Not really. So farming, in Cataclysm, I get 99% of my food from looting. It's just so easy in the current stage of the game to just loot and loot and loot. Basically, every house has enough food to last you for probably a couple of days in every single fridge in the game, even with something like lactose intolerant that limits the amount of food we can actually consume personally. In spite of that and food allergies and stuff, you can still just find tons of food in every house in the game. There are supermarkets, obviously contain a lot of food. There are a lot of places that store a lot of canned goods. Like we went to the pet store and came away with, I don't know, probably 15 cans of tuna and chicken, which isn't like a ton, but if you factor in the actual amount of calories, that's like probably a week plus worth of food, so calorie-wise. So it's really easy to find food, but when it comes to non-perishable, or rather not non-perishable, food that is replenishable, right? Because if we go up to this house up here and we loot it, it's done. It's looted. There's never going to be more material here in the future. Nothing new is going to spawn. The only source of renewable food is nature. And so it becomes a question of how do we control that? We've talked previously about foraging as a ongoing source of nutrients. In the springtime, you're going to get, I mean, just kind of a crapshoot of stuff. Mostly you're going to be, I guess, looking for wild veggies. A lot of people will harvest pine trees because they give pine cones, which can be converted to pine nuts, and pine boughs, which can be converted to pine needle tea, which is pretty much all you really need if you're trying to min-max. Pine nuts have a lot of calories, and pine needle tea is good for your health stat. So a lot of people swear by the pine trees. I actually don't do that. I feel like that's a little bit exploitive. Just because the pine nuts are so easily available and they're pretty high in calories and they're not very much work to get them. So I really don't do that just out of a sense of like propriety. Plus, for roleplay reasons, I don't want my character to just live on pine nuts. As much as people like to go the full forageable, living in the wild type route, pine nuts actually aren't that nutritionally viable for a character. So I don't like the idea of feeding him nuts basically every day, all day. But it is something that people do and people talk about. So wanted to mention that. In the springtime, foraging will get you random stuff, pretty random stuff. You'll get a lot of herbs and kind of not particularly calorie dense food by foraging. We talked about certain flowers and plants have value. You know, you can harvest dandelions to eat their greens and to make tea out of them, things like that. As the seasons progress, you get better and better stuff. So in the summertime, fruit trees and berries will be in bloom. They're going to be a huge source of food. A lot of these trees that are currently not doing anything are actually fruit trees. And so when we go out in the summertime, we'll be able to just walk through the woods, pick up peaches and plums and all kinds of berries and things like that. A lot of these bushes are blackberry bushes, things like that. And then in the autumn is nut season. So basically every tree you harvest will give you lots of nuts. Nuts have a lot of calories to them. And they basically are shelf stable forever. So they're a great source of food. So you can rely on the natural world. Then you add to that there are animals at all stages of the year. So you can always get meat if you go look hard enough. There's always going to be the option of fishing. So fishing is something you can do. I don't like fishing in the game. It's a little time consuming for the amount of calories that you get back. Now, I know people talk about fish traps, so it's less like that. If you go out with a fishing pole, you end up standing there for several hours. You might get 2 or 3 fish. Fish aren't that calorically dense, so it ends up not really being worth it, in my opinion. But people tell me all the time that you can set fish traps and just collect them instead of spending time sitting at the water's edge. And some people will try to breed them in small pools. I don't know if that actually works or not. And then just kill them as they get harvested. We have already taken steps to capture ourselves some food. So like taking eggs, knowing that they're going to hatch, and putting them in a place where, I thought they rotted away. Putting them in a place that's confined, you can let them raise up into chickens, kill them and eat them. You can raise rabbits in the game. There are lots of farms in the country where there are captive livestock that you can pretty easily kill for heaps and heaps of meat. There are farms in the game that will produce tons and tons of wheat just out in the fields, which is enough, like one field is enough calories to sustain you for a very long time. So there's a lot of natural bounty in the world. The only one that we have a lot of control over, like I said, we can capture animals to the best of our ability, but that's not like, I can't control when they not breed, but when they reproduce, how many of them there will be, how much meat they actually have on them. The easiest thing to do is with chickens and other birds, because bird eggs will hatch. I guess other birds hatch. The only ones I know hatch are chickens, but I'd imagine some of the other ones do as well. But the only one I can really reliably do trapping, catching them in place with, is the chickens, and the chickens barely give any meat when they're killed. So it's not really a viable long-term survival thing. Chickens produce eggs, but eggs are relatively low calories. I believe you can milk cows, but I'm always a lactose intolerant character, so I don't even know how that works. The only thing we have a ton of control over is farming, growing our own food. And it's fine. When I first started playing, I really liked farming. Farming is one of my favorite things to do in video games. I know that is not a popular thing. I know people love Stardew Valley, right? But I grew up playing Harvest Moon. I've played literally Harvest Moon 3 and Friends of Mineral Town, I probably put a combined like 5,000 hours in those two games. I had played them so much when I was a kid. Stardew Valley I played a lot. I play Farming Simulator. I know that that's like such a weak thing to say. People make fun of me all the time, but I actually really like farming in video games. It's something that is very peaceful and meditative to go out and do that kind of... Anyway, look, you can farm in the game. I really liked farming in the game. They have automated it to the point where it's totally tolerable and very easily done. I just don't love it in Cataclysm because it's so easy to find food elsewhere. The amount of time it takes to grow food, and then when you harvest it, you have to go through the act of preserving it. It's so much easier just to go out and loot. And yes, at some point you will reach a point where food in houses is going to be not very common, right? Once they implement the looting system. I think over time all food will eventually rot, and so you're stuck just trying to find canned goods that are left over. But by the time you get there, you'll be bored with the game. Like, I've never gotten to that point. I haven't even seen wintertime in like 2 years, because by the time I get, 120 days into the game, I'm sick of playing. I've already become a cyborg mutant at that point, and I don't really want to continue playing. So for me, farming is something I like the idea of, but when it actually comes to the practice of it, it just doesn't feel super valuable to me. But since we're doing tutorial stuff, we really ought to illustrate how it's done. Now, you're going to need a few things to farm. Number one, you're going to need a date in the game that is appropriate. So if you're trying to plant in the wintertime, it will not work. And if you're trying to plant in early spring, it will not work. Now, I believe it's based on the actual temperature. So like at night, if we try to plant, let's say it's spring day 10. If we try to plant at night, it will likely be too cold, and it will tell us it's too cold to plant. If we wait until 10 a.m., 11 a.m. the next morning, it might be warm enough for us to plant. So it's actually based on temperature, not the specific date, but because date and temperature are tied together because of the seasons. In general, don't plant in early spring. You're not going to be able to. Don't plant in wintertime. You're not going to be able to. Late fall, you're not going to be able to. So mid to late spring is the optimal time to plant, because it guarantees that you will get at least one major harvest, usually in the first week or so of spring. Different plants will take different periods of time to grow. You can apply fertilizer, which will increase, I believe, the speed at which the plant grows, but it will decrease the yield from that plant. So you're going to need appropriate weather. You're going to need a digging tool. You can make a hoe or shovel or something of that nature. We have the the entrenching tool. So we'll just grab the entrenching tool. And then you're going to need seeds. What are these seeds? Vegetable stems. Oh yeah, I had debugged those in like the first episode to illustrate something. I don't want to use those. They're very easy to get. And we're going to talk about what plants I usually plant and why. So you're going to need seeds. They would be on our unsorted pile. So if we look for seeds, you'll see we have bean seeds, cannabis seeds, celery seeds, raspberry seeds, and sunflower seeds. These are not very good seeds. Beans are okay. We would want to plant our beans. Cannabis is okay, of course, will give us weed plants eventually, but last I checked, they were able to be made into oil. Is that correct? We would be looking for, I think it's made from the seeds. Just go to seeds? No, we were looking for component seeds. Doesn't look like we have anything. I could swear that you could make oil from the seeds, which I used to do. But then also marijuana obviously is a mood booster. So it's usually, I usually plant a few of the cannabis seeds if I have them. Celery, raspberry, and sunflowers are not as valuable. And the reason for this is because what they produce is not super calorically dense, and it's not super easily, it doesn't have a great shelf life on it. So like raspberry seeds, one, they grow so plentiful in summertime that I don't see any reason to plant them ourselves. And two, the amount of calories that they have per portion is not very substantial. Celery is the same way. It's like eating lettuce. It's a very low calorie count food. And so the amount of time that it takes to grow it, it almost seems not worth it. Sunflower seeds, I think, can also be made into oil. Yeah, in fact, it says could be pressed into oil. What about cannabis seeds? Can be roasted or eaten raw. It doesn't say anything about oil. Maybe I'm misremembering. But sunflower seeds, the only real benefit to planting sunflowers is to press them into oil eventually. And again, these are something that spawns relatively plentifully in the world. In fact, we can see a few sunflowers. Why don't we pop out and see about harvesting them? It's not the correct season for this plant. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know they had a season attached to them. But sunflowers grow out in the world, and so I wouldn't really see a purpose in planting those. If you pressed me and said, hey, what would you really like to plant? The beans are good, because beans, do we have any portions of beans that we could look at? Bean, not really. Just pork and beans. Okay, dried beans. I believe dried beans are what you would receive from... Are they dried when you harvest them? Whatever. Beans have an okay calorie count, and they usually have a decent shelf life. So beans are a good one. Other ones I tend to plant, if we go to our recipes and we search for seeds, we can actually convert foods to seeds. So when you're out and you're clearing a refrigerator, let's say, and you find a bunch of tomatoes, well, they're going to go bad. What you could do is convert them instead into tomato seeds, which I don't see on this list. And there they are. You can take a tomato apart and it will give you 4 portions of seeds. So if you know your food is going to rot anyway before you eat it, it's good to convert them to seeds. Like we had some lettuce. Oh, apparently there's nothing with lettuce. I thought you could plant something from a lettuce, but I guess not. But anyway, if you're looking in your crafting menu, if you go over to food and you go over to the seeds menu, this is where everything is listed. Because not everything has the word seed attached to it. So, for instance, raw lentils can be planted, and it's not actually... raw lentils can be converted to... No. What? It converts raw lentils into raw lentils? Okay, this is not a great episode so far. Okay, look. When you have a lot of food, you should try converting some of them to seeds. That way, you don't have to worry about their shelf life. Now, the things I typically plant, I like to plant potatoes. One, because they're easily made. Seed potatoes are very easy. You can find a lot of potatoes laying around. Potatoes have an okay calorie count, and they can be used in some pretty easy, simple recipes. So I like planting potatoes. Plus, I like to roleplay Mark Watney. So there's that. The other thing I like to plant is pumpkins. And the reason I plant pumpkins is because pumpkins have a really long shelf life. So if we go try to eat some pumpkin... You'll see, although it doesn't have a lot of calories, it does stay good. I think these are on 8 weeks. I actually think it's a couple, I thought it was more than a full season. They last quite a long time. So when you harvest the pumpkins, you don't have to worry about immediately preserving that food in order to keep it going. Now, if you have a setup where you have freezers installed in your base and you can just freeze all the food, then it's not a big deal. You would just plant anything that doesn't have the mushy flag. Anything with the mushy flag, if it freezes and then thaws and then freezes, it will become, it will rot. It'll say it will be mushy after thawing out. Then if you refreeze it, it will become rotten. So you want to avoid things that have the mushy flag. You want to avoid foods that are not good for you. So for instance, we have these chili peppers. And we could convert them to seeds and plant them, but you'll see they only give 15 calories, and they actually negatively affect our happiness. Now, I don't know if they're used for anything in particular. Doesn't really look like it. I assume you can make chili powder, which is a spice, which would be good. So maybe you would want to plant those. But my point is, I tend to plant things that have a decent calorie count or that keep for a long time, like potatoes and pumpkins. Now, wheat, all the grains are a really good target to have because you can convert them to flour, and they tend to have a lot of calories, and they tend to have an infinite shelf life. So wheat is a good one to plant. Canola is a good one to plant because you can make oil. The breads I usually make require some kind of oil component alongside the flour or cornmeal or whatever. So I like to have a lot of oil, although again, in the game currently, oil is very plentiful. If we look here, we probably have... about 800 charges of oil. So we don't need to worry about that. Plus, you can make oil from fat from animals. Really, it's a question about preserving that food. This has gone off the rails a little bit. I feel like I'm very scatterbrained at the moment. Whatever. Point is, you need a digging tool. It needs to be appropriately temperatured outside. You need to have seeds of what you want to plant. So we picked up the bean and cannabis. So let's just use those as an example at the moment. We would go outside. Hopefully it's warm enough at the moment. We would like a nice, empty space to plant. Obviously this is not good. There's a lot of stuff that would block up. Really, you can just plant in a row along the road. It doesn't really matter, but I like having a big open space, which it doesn't look like we're going to get. So we'll just use this area right here as our farm. So you can do this manually. You would activate your entrenching tool or whatever, and you would go to, it used to be till soil. Upturn earth would be my guess. Till soil, yes. So you would go to upturn earth. You would select a tile. It would create this mound. You would then hit the examine key, examine the mound, and place your seed. Now, that's all well and good, but we can do this a lot more quickly. Like, let's say we wanted to plant basically all the seeds that we had. Let's just grab every seed we have. No, pick them up. Then let's head outside here. So now we have 8, 12, 14 seeds. Obviously, we could do these one at a time, but that's a bit time consuming. Instead, we would do this with the zone manager tool, which we talked about in a previous episode. So we hit capital Y. We would add a new zone. We would go to farm plot, and we would mark which seed we want to do. So let's say we'll do raspberry seeds first because we have 4 of them. We would select. We would then move as many tiles as we want to be selected for this particular portion. Then we would hit enter again, and now we would have raspberries set up. And we'll do the same thing again with celery seeds. We'll do those here, and we'll add another plot for the sunflower seeds, which will just be 2 because we only have 2 seeds. Add a farm plot. Beans, we'll set up beans down here. Okay, and we'll add a farm plot. What did we miss? Cannabis. And we'll add cannabis over here. And I think that's it. Did we miss one? Raspberry, celery. Yeah, I think we hit it. So now we would confirm this by escaping and saving. And then if we hit the O, where we normally would press to sort our loot, instead we get this farming menu because we can't get to our auto loot area. So it's just displaying our farm plots. If they were close together, it would ask us which thing we want to do. We would go to farm plots, and it will initially begin by setting up the earth. This will not plant. It did plant. Okay, that used to be 2 separate options. You would first till the soil, and then you would sort again, and it would say, hey, do you want to plant? And then you would go to plant here. Apparently it does that all at once now. So in just a few key presses, we were able to set this up. Now, since we only had, a handful of seeds and each of them were in like 2 portions, that was a lot of key presses. But you can understand if we were planting 15 pumpkins, 12 beans, 10 wheat, all that stuff, it saves you tons of time and key presses by using the sorting manager instead of doing it all by hand. In fact, why don't we plant some pumpkin? So what we're going to do, we're going to come back to base, splintered wood, drop that in the fire. I like pumpkins because they will fill you up. They're a good thing to eat when you're not really looking to consume calories and you're just looking to eat something to fill your belly. They can also be made into mashed pumpkin, which is not, I don't care about, but I do tend to eat them. They're good like lettuce to just fill your belly when you're not quite hungry, when you don't really need the calories. Apparently it takes about an hour to get 10 pumpkin seeds. Oh, I'm sorry, they're 2 pumpkin. So 20 pumpkin seeds. Still, pumpkins are literally filled with seeds. I don't want to spend an hour doing this, so we'll spend half an hour to get 10 portions of pumpkin seeds. Dispose, no big deal. And we'll convert those into seeds, which we'll then plant as well. Pop back outside, set up our zone manager. Farm plot, pumpkin seed, pumpkin. We'll just run this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll just plant those there. Save, yes. Farm, yes. And no, you can finish what you're doing, then we'll go to bed. Yeah, we're dead tired. We've been up for a long time. There we've planted our pumpkins. And now basically, depending on the vegetable, it will take a certain amount of time to grow, or fruit or whatever. It will take a certain amount of time to grow. We can speed this up by applying fertilizer. But applying fertilizer, if we examine the tile, it will say We have no fertilizer. We can apply fertilizer. This will increase the speed at which it grows, so we will be able to harvest sooner, but it will decrease the overall yield of the food. What else is there about farming? Obviously, you want to harvest before the weather kills the crops. These will persist through season changes. So, like, let's say we get to summer day 1, all the world will change. All the fruit trees will change. Lots of the shrubbery will refresh to be searched again. It will not have an impact on your plants. They will continue growing into summer. I believe at winter it will flat out kill all the plants immediately. But I'm not sure how cold weather kills crops, but it will definitely happen eventually. And it takes quite a long time for farming to really become harvestable, and really, again, preserving the food is the issue. If you don't have a freezer or somewhere that you can permanently store them, you're going to want to focus, like I do, on vegetables that have a long shelf life. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. It's the most reliable way to control generating of food. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. So I guess we'll just call the episode there. I don't think that was a good explanation. I think I really glossed over it. But I gave you the gist of how it works, and you'll have to decide for yourself what is the most valuable things to plant. Again, I like potatoes. I like pumpkins. I'll grow some of the grains, because they can be made pretty easily into flour, and then that is converted to bread, and so on and so forth. If you can grow cattails, if you harvest cattails, you can grow your own, I believe, which is good because you can make them into antiseptics. So that's something to think about. Later in the game, wild herbs and teas are something I really like to grow because it lets you make tea. I just feel like I'm scattershotting this episode, and I didn't do a very good job of... Let's not focus on that. So for now, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully that made sense. I, of course, will be back with more tutorial content in the near future. I'll see you next time.